is set. Torontonians will be heading back to the polls this summer to elect a new mayor.
Torontonians now can get ready and start to look at, what is this race going to look like? What is the candidate roster going to be?
June 26th, that's when the by-election will be held. The city clerk announcing the date today following the stepping down of John Tory last week. Plus,
pretty much every time I ride the TTC now, there is some kind of security incident somewhere along the line.
riders are noticing it, and now there are numbers to back it up. New data from the TTC shows violent incidents against passengers are rising at an alarming rate. And
you are the premier of this province, and you should be held to a higher account.
Ontario's opposition leader files a complaint with the Integrity Commissioner, calling for an investigation into whether Premier Ford violated ethics rules when developers attended his daughter's stag and do. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. A date has officially been set for a by-election to replace John Tory as mayor. Torontonians will be back at the ballot box at the end of June, pending a council meeting next month. Now, the estimated cost of this by-election, about $13 million. Del Manukduk has more details.
I want to say thank you to the people of the City of Toronto.
It's been a week since John Tory said goodbye to Toronto, and this Torontonian sent the former mayor off with a few parting gifts. As for starting with a clean slate, Toronto City Clerk announced a by-election date for June 26th.
There's a lot of preparation, the polling stations, and so it's not, you just can't call a by-election overnight.
In a news release, the city says its clerk believes announcing the date now is in the best interest of Toronto, allowing it to start hiring election staff and booking voting locations. Here are the key dates. Nominations are set to open April 3rd and close May 12th. Advanced voting will take place June 8th to the 13th, and then the by-election will be held Monday, June 26th. But first, staff has to declare the mayor's seat vacant, and that should happen during a council meeting at the end of March.
Torontonians now can get ready and start to look at, what is this race going to look like? What is the candidate roster going to be? And what kind of leader do we need to take us forward in our city?
These residents have some ideas.
I just want someone that realizes what everyone's going through and take the steps necessary to make it a more comfortable living for everyone from top to bottom.
Just someone who's not super woke. Like, that's my main thing. But I don't care. Yeah. And just that stops wasting the money. Sometimes they're always wasting too much money.
Two candidates who ran last fall have already jumped in the race: Gil Penalosa, who finished a distant second, and Blake Acton, who placed fourth. Former Councillor Joe Cressy, who some were hoping would run, decided not to. The more interesting question might not be who's in or who's out, but who's still considering running. There's a ton of firepower up in the air, some big names, including current councillors Brad Bradford and Josh Matlow, former councillor Anna Bailau, MPP Mitzi Hunter, former mayoral candidate Chloe Brown, and former chief of police Mark Saunders. As the field takes shape, it could create better voter turnout. Last fall, Toronto had a historically low turnout of just 30%, due in part to a non-competitive race and voter fatigue, with the provincial vote having taken place just a few months prior. This political scientist says this by-election is the equivalent of a presidential vote.
Winner take all, it's the head of council. Who is it going to be? It'll be that one election choice and only that one. So I think the simplicity of a single race is going to boost voter turnout.
Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
The TTC will no doubt be an election issue come June. And tonight, we're getting updated numbers on violent incidents that have taken place on the system over the past year. As Meg Roberts reports, there has been a troubling rise in violence against passengers.
I have noticed that pretty much every time I ride the TTC now, there is some kind of security incident somewhere along the line.
No, riders aren't imagining an uptick in security incidents on the TTC. There's been about a 46% increase in violent incidents against customers from 2021 to 2022. There were 145 incidents in December, making for a total of 1,068 incidents this past year. That's compared to about 734 in 2021, and pre-pandemic in 2018, there were 679 incidents.
I just think the general rule is now be cautious of where you are and who's around you and your surroundings.
The TTC has chalked the increase up to a number of societal challenges like mental health and addictions issues, as well as access to housing.
We're as concerned as anyone else is. Our employees tell us, our customers tell us, and that's why it's important that we respond the way that we do.
TTC says the volume of calls for safety have exceeded capacity, and it will be hiring 50 additional special constables, 20 community safety ambassadors, and Toronto Police have deployed 80 officers on the TTC.
We want to make sure that people not only feel safe and comfortable, but that they are safe and comfortable on the TTC, our employees and our customers.
Around exploring alternatives.
This councillor says an increase in police will not fix the issue long term, and wants to consider deeper solutions like investing in mental health services and permanent housing.
$1.7 million towards police when we just came off a budget process where we know that we could make much more modest investments and actually address some of the core issues that make not just the transit safer, but actually our city safer as a whole.
In the meanwhile, some riders say they try and stay vigilant while riding the TTC.
You just kind of have to take it day by day and see what happens, which is kind of nerve-wracking.
The latest incident occurred here at the Yonge and Bloor subway station Sunday night. Police say a person was assaulted and fell onto the subway tracks. Police are looking for a suspect. Meg Roberts, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, about 20% of all TTC routes across the city will see changes at the end of next month. The changes will mean improvements on some routes, but for many, service will be less frequent and in some cases suspended. Linda Ward has the details.
For those who regularly wait for the Queen streetcar, an extra 2 minutes is par for the course.
I feel like the streetcar's been very hectic lately. It actually didn't even come the other day, so I had to Uber.
It sucks because it's cold out too, and like you'd have to adjust what time you leave and stuff like that, and like work is accommodating, like they understand, but it is inconvenient.
501 is one of 39 routes that will be affected starting March 26th. Some will see shorter or similar wait times, but others will wait longer, up to 12 minutes in some cases, and some routes won't run at all. The TTC says the changes were necessary.
Our ridership right now is about 70% of what it was pre-pandemic. That comes with some consequences in terms of our revenue stream. So what we've had to do is sort of pare back service a little bit, but we're doing it around the edges. We're making sure that we're preserving the busiest routes at the busiest times of day.
This will take service from 96% of pre-pandemic levels to 91. And a week later, the TTC is hiking fares by 10 cents. This transit advocate worries this could further alienate commuters.
These are routes that shift workers and people rely on in periods when they're trying to get to work. And that off-peak period is when ridership has been returning the fastest. So this is an area where if the TTC increased service, perhaps they'd see more ridership come back. Instead, they're cutting it at a time that we need to be winning riders back to the system.
This TTC board member fought to restore service during budget consultations.
We should go back to pre-pandemic levels to 100%. We should not increase the single fare by 10 cents. So I'm not surprised as to what's going on now because we have less people in the system.
And this rider says they need more service, not less.
There's a growing population in Toronto and we definitely need better schedules and more transportation, if anything.
A second batch of service adjustments are scheduled to come into effect on May 7th. In total, the changes are expected to save the TTC about $50 million. Linda Ward, CBC News, Toronto.
That sucks. It's it's got a wetness to it, so it's heavy.
It was a day filled with shovels after a walloping winter storm hit the GTA last night. Nearly 20 centimeters of snow falling in parts of the city since yesterday. The weather made for a messy commute, but some taking advantage of the powder to have a good time.
This is our first toboggan of the year.
Yeah, the snow is not great for tobogganing, I won't lie. It's a bit heavy, but we figure if we go down enough times, we'll pack it down. And
So some fun to be had. And while some were enjoying a good time at the hill, snowplows and salt trucks were busy making rounds all day long. The city says the cleanup could take days. They say their crews will need to make multiple passes to clear roads, sidewalks, and bike lanes. Let's go to meteorologist Colette Kennedy now. And Colette, today mostly about that cleanup from the mess left from the day before.
Yeah, and that mess is going to be sticking around, and I'm about to show you why. This is just kind of a snapshot from this afternoon in terms of where the temperatures were sitting. So the temperatures were still rising into southern Ontario. Of course, we got a little bit milder into these evening hours that have just passed, and winds turning around, and now it's going to cool back down again. But look at this much colder air northwest of us. Yes, that is going to be feeding towards us. Okay, maybe not temperatures quite that extreme, but the point is that air is coming our way as the winds turn towards the northwest. So a few areas, yes, obviously we had the problems with the drizzle, freezing drizzle, but it being mostly patchy in nature and seeing improvement, and that carries on through the overnight. A few areas with some fog, but otherwise it's just flurries, kind of hit and miss. And we get some partial clearing, so it makes for variable skies tomorrow, meaning at times we should get some sun coming through, but then at other times more cloud cover is going to be there with us. But cold air in place. -9 tonight, feeling like -17, -5 the daytime high, Kelda, tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, thanks so much, Colette. New healthcare deals are starting to fall into place between the provinces and the federal government. Ontario and all of the Atlantic provinces have signed agreements in principle with Ottawa.
When we made the healthcare announcement and we had the meeting with the First Ministers a few weeks ago, I said we were going to get moving forward on negotiations within weeks, not months, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau confirmed the agreements following a town hall meeting with students at Dalhousie University in Halifax. The federal government is putting up $46 billion over the next 10 years. Since the premiers agreed to the offer, bilateral talks have been underway to develop funding arrangements for each province. To Queen's Park now, and Ontario's NDP leader is calling for an investigation into whether Premier Doug Ford violated ethics rules after developers and lobbyists reportedly attended his daughter's stag and doe and wedding. Lorena Redekop has the latest.
This morning, I filed a complaint with the Integrity Commissioner.
NDP leader Marit Stiles started off question period asking the Premier about her complaint
surrounding their family fundraiser and his cozy relationship with developers.
The Premier has confirmed those attending his daughter's stag and doe a month before the wedding included developers, paying $150 to get in. In her letter to the Integrity Commissioner, Stiles says she's concerned that invitees felt pressured to contribute to the Premier's family fundraiser, invited as government stakeholders, not friends. According to Global News, some developers who then attended the wedding benefited from Ford's changes to the Greenbelt to allow development on some pieces of land. Today, the Toronto Star reports the wedding guests included provincial appointees and a lobbyist, along with prominent developers. CBC has not independently confirmed this. The Premier's chair was empty during question period today. The government House leader dismissed the NDP leader's complaint.
Tried this once. The Integrity Commissioner has said that there was no issue with it. The Premier has answered the question. So let's try another smear tactic, Mr. Speaker. Let's try bringing the family into it.
The Integrity Commissioner did find there was no problem, but only based on information the Premier brought him, months after the events happened, following a media inquiry. Ford has never disclosed what information he provided.
The Integrity Commissioner rolled over like a lapdog and never should have given an opinion on this party and the wedding without investigating fully.
The NDP won't disclose what evidence it brought forward until the Integrity Commissioner confirms he's investigating. But Stiles says she believes this needs to be looked into.
It is really important that the Premier of this province holds himself to a higher degree of accountability and conduct than your average person. Right? He's not your average father of the bride.
The Commissioner confirms he has received the NDP's complaint and is reviewing it. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
A Liberal MPP says he wants to bring accountability and oversight to temporary nursing agencies in Ontario. Adil Shamji tabled a private member's bill at Queen's Park that he hopes will do just that.
I've heard, for example, of agency operators recruiting nurses out of hospital parking lots, of agency operators who also own long-term care homes and double dip in inflated profits. I've heard of nurses who are recruited out of their hospital jobs and then sent back to those very same hospitals they worked at a cost multiplier of 3 to 4 times for the public system.
Shamji says right now there is no oversight of temporary nursing agencies, and he says those companies are contributing to the loss of nurses from hospitals. The bill he tabled would require agencies to obtain a license from the Ministry of Health. Welcome back. It is Ontario Heritage Week, and a new project by Heritage Toronto is shining a spotlight on the city's first Caribbean community. Called The Living History of Little Jamaica, the interactive online experience supported by TD aims to give people a deeper understanding of the neighborhood's cultural significance through the voices of those who live there. I had a chance to learn more about it.
This is probably the most popular stop. A lot of people come here. People come here from outside of the country.
Victoria Ate is an emerging historian behind the online experience, The Living History of Little Jamaica.
It's really about the people of Little Jamaica. It's about the families that have lived here. It's about the businesses that they've built here. And it's about tracing that history from as far back as the 1950s.
An interactive map pinpoints important sites in the neighborhood, allowing people to learn more about their history and significance. Sites like Reggae Lane, home of this mural tracing the community's reggae roots.
Some of the musicians here still live in Little Jamaica.
So does the artist who painted the mural, Adrian Hales. He's also one of 8 community members who provided oral history interviews for the project.
My father is a DJ, or was a DJ, and so my connection to the community started at an early age as we came there for records.
Oral histories are really good for immigrant communities because we have a different sort of literature. We're more of a storytelling group. Having people use their own voices to tell those stories and having that collection, it just adds a richness, it gives it life.
Deandra Montague is another resident who provided oral history for the project. She grew up in Little Jamaica, surrounded by its numerous barbershops and beauty salons, and now runs her own online beauty store.
For a very long time, this was the only area that you could come to get your hair done as a person with textured hair. So all the beauty supply stores, beauty salons, barbershops that you saw kind of became a hub. And I always see those places as community spaces for people to gather, to be able to talk, catch up on life, catch up on work.
Other stops on the map, Treasure Isle.
It's a very old record store, and they used to press 45-inch LPs in there.
And the much-beloved Randy's Patties, which closed in 2022 after more than 40 years, in large part due to the pandemic and the endless construction of the Eglinton Crosstown LRT. People lining up around the block last February for one last patty.
Losing Randy's was very tough. A lot of businesses that were here, that were integral to this community, are no longer existing. Hopefully one day I'll be able to open a brick and mortar in this neighborhood. And I think that's a hope for a lot of other entrepreneurs as young as myself or with Jamaican descent such as myself, because we know how important this area is, and to be able to bring community back in that way would mean so much to us.
I hope the online experience, what people take away from it is the opportunity to hear those stories, an appreciation for the history here, an appreciation for the heritage here. And also, I hope it gives people the courage to tell their own stories, the courage to look into their own heritage here, find out why there's a little Jamaica in Toronto, find out why there's a little Tibet in Toronto, find out why we have Greektown and Chinatown. All those neighborhoods are part of the mosaic that Toronto is. The other part is that Little Jamaica, like I said, is a neighborhood in transition, and so part of this is that so people don't forget. Right? And so that it lives in memory, because cities change, places change. But if we keep the stories alive, if you keep the recognition of the people who have been here alive, it allows us to continue to have value for those things.
Fittingly, today is Jamaican Patty Day in Toronto. Now in its 38th year, the day honors Toronto's historic Patty Wars of 1985. At the time, local authorities decided Jamaican patty vendors could no longer use the term beef patties. Following heated negotiations, the patty vendors prevailed. The ruling was issued on this day in 1985. to Colette now with a look at your long-range forecast. And Colette, you were mentioning the snow and ice we got could be sticking around for a bit due to the frigid temperatures.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Any areas where even a little bit of melting into the evening hours, it doesn't matter, freezing right back up with this very cold air that's pressing in at least through the first half of the weekend. So here it is, chillier conditions, but then the temperatures by Sunday will be rebounding with daytime highs going back above freezing. And I've got my eyes on Monday, and the reason being rain, snow, mix. Yes, still hard to tell as it gets closer, be able to fine tune that forecast, but it does look like another system, probably late day Monday into Monday night. Not like we just saw, perhaps not that bad, but still something coming on through. We've been seeing an improvement from that freezing drizzle, but the lake effect means some of those flurries can make their way at times into the GTA. So even overnight tonight, a few flurries possible through southwestern Ontario. And then it's more widespread as we go into Saturday. So the clouds become variable tomorrow through the day, but into Saturday, it's more overcast and widespread flurries move in. Then into Sunday, we should be able to carve out some sun mixing with the cloud again. So it'll be milder, and we'll start to see some melting by then, but not in the meantime, with a wind chill near -15 tonight and lows of -7 in southwestern Ontario. And then looking around the Golden Horseshoe at the readings of -12 in Oshawa to a milder -6 in St. Catharines. But watch out for those wind chills tomorrow morning. Even in the afternoon, it's still going to feel like -10 to -11. There we go, Saturday, -2 after a morning low of -13. Then that turnaround happens. So Sunday, 3 degrees, and then into Monday. That temperature really important in terms of what type of precipitation we're going to get with that next system that's going to come through, Kelda.
All right, thanks so much, Colette. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Maribel Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.